All right. Well, hi everyone. When we get started, welcome and thank you for joining us for our panel discussion on Why Organic Now? Linking Social Justice to Personal and Planetary Health. I'm Nikki Kolb, NOFA New Hampshire's Operations Manager. And NOFA New Hampshire is the Northeast Organic Farming Association of New Hampshire. We promote organic farming, gardening, and land care practices for healthy communities. And we're looking forward to exploring specific ways that localized, organic, regenerative growing and eating can contribute to the repair of unjust social structures, personal health, and the environment that sustains us with you tonight. But before we get started, I'd like to quickly go over our agenda. I'll be introducing our panelists shortly, and then open the conversation with some of NOFA New Hampshire's questions for our speakers. And after that, we'll turn the floor over to you during a Q&A. We're asking everyone to please keep yourselves muted during the call and to type your questions into the chat box throughout the discussion. I'll read out your questions when we get to the Q&A portion of the evening. And I'd also like to note that we are recording this meeting. And finally, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Bonafide Green Goods and the Littleton Food Co-op for supporting this event. And without further ado, let's meet our panelists. So we have Marita Canedo from Migrant Justice, Diana Carpinone from Non-Toxic Dover, New Hampshire and Non-Toxic Communities, and Jameson Small from Fresh Start Farms and the Organization for Refugee and Immigrant Success. And welcome and thank you all for being here. And I'm going to turn off my sharing here and ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and their work. I'd like you all to be able to see each other. All right.
Hello, my name is Marita Canedo. I'm originally from Bolivia. I'm in Vermont right now, and I'm part of the Migrant Justice team. And Migrant Justice is a grassroots organization that is led by dairy farm workers, usually from South Mexico and Guatemala. And our mission is to build the voice, capacity, and power of the farm worker community and engage community partners to organize for economic justice and human rights. We gather the farm worker community to discuss and analyze shared problems and to envision collective solutions. And through this ongoing investment in leadership development, members deepen their skills in community education and organizing for long-term systemic change. Our members have defined community problems as a denial of rights and dignity and have prioritized building a movement to secure these fundamental human rights, to dignify work and quality housing, freedom of movement and access to transportation, freedom from discrimination, and access to healthcare. So thank you, everybody, and welcome.
Thank you, Marita. Diana, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Sure. My name's Diana Carpenoni, and I live in Dover, New Hampshire. I founded a community group here in Dover, and our most recent success was just this spring. We got the city to switch over to all organic management on all city property. I also am the co-founder of Non-Toxic Communities, and we are a national nonprofit. And I guess the easiest way to describe what we do is to help other people do the same thing that Non-Toxic Dover did in Dover, New Hampshire, all across the country. My co-founder did the same thing in California, and we work with people and groups all over the country to do that.
Great. Hi, my name is Jameson Small, and I work with the Organization for Refugee and Immigrant Success. And we are located in Manchester. We do a lot of work in Manchester and Concord and Nashua. And yeah, we're an immigrant-led, immigrant-run organization. And it was established in 2008. And we operate a farm program called Fresh Start Farms, where we work with 23 new American farmers to help them provide TA assistance so they can start their own businesses, and then also act as a marketing and distribution brand for their products. So yeah, we just got a new spot in Manchester with the helps of NeighborWorks of Southern New Hampshire. So we have a new food hub that we launched this year, and online ordering and home delivery that has really helped us really grow. And yeah, excited to be here tonight to talk.
Awesome. Thank you all for introducing yourselves and sharing a little bit more about the work of your organizations and your backgrounds. And so I'll start with our first question. So caring for the land is an essential part of agriculture. How can organic farming, gardening, and land care improve the health of farmers, eaters, and/or the planet?
All right. I'll start with that. Yeah, I think the the essence of that question is really about why organic and why is that really important. And I think that of those items, the health of farmers, the eaters, and the planet. I think for a long time we've been hyper focused on the kind of the pitch of the planet part, and I think it really does start with the worker. And if 80% of the people that are working on farms today are immigrants, and oftentimes are being taken advantage of. So your purchase power is directly impacting that and prolonging that. So I think organic is important because of what you're exposed to, most importantly, for the worker and also for the consumers. But we're fortunate enough in the Northeast that a lot of the farms are moving towards organic. So we can kind of almost take it for granted in some ways. So if you're at the supermarket and you're buying whatever type of food, if you do take that extra step to buy the organic product, then the people and the earth will certainly be in better shape than the alternative. But in all cases, to keep it direct to consumer is by far the most impactful. I think that's my answer.
Yeah, if I may add to that, thank you, Jameson. I think we have to start thinking how agriculture came to be not organic, right? And how the mass production and monoculture came to not only destroy the planet, but also bring people to work in situations that are terrible, starting from slavery. Now we call it modern slavery, when we have a big immigrant community coming to work on agriculture, surviving, and at the same time getting sick by being exposed to this chemical and pesticides, and the situation that the industry of food it has become. So I think it's important to understand that where we come from, things have been organic for years, and we didn't call it organic. It was just food, and we will plant our food, and we will grow our food, and it was just how it was. And now, because of all the changes and of all the big industry, we had to use all these other things and destroy our bodies and destroy our planet and everything, and became part of this big monster of industry that is creating something that is destroying us. So I think it's really, really important to put out there that we have to really think about the beginning of agriculture and bring it to the human factor of, yes, when humans are in good working conditions, when there is no toxics, when there is no all this forced labor, and this like thinking about a culture of a machine of work and not thinking about what we're eating. I think it's really important to, okay, we are what we eat, and we need to really put it into place that organic is good. Not necessarily all the organic farms are going to be good, but how we think about it, it can really lead to a better way to be in harmony, in harmony with farmers, eaters, planet, and all the elements that are needed.
So I guess I'll Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I'll comment on the organic land care aspect of that. I think probably the most obvious thing is preventing exposure to toxic pesticides. Um, and usually we think of our kids, and that's important, of course, because they are vulnerable to exposures. But the workers are getting much more exposures, the applicators, who are doing the work, the landscapers. And so if we're asking for a change in the methods, it protects them as well. And of course, it's important for us to preserve, the natural resources that we have. Where I live, we're right on a watershed. We have a really beautiful place that we live in. We want to preserve that and, keep it healthy for future generations.
That's wonderful. Thank you all. And I just realized someone messaged me in the chat. If anyone has joined recently, please add any questions that you have to the chat, and we're going to have a Q&A portion at the end where I'll read out all of your questions. Thank you for the reminder to anyone who's joined recently. All right, that was great. So the next question that we have is, what can the organic farming and land care movements do to ensure fair labor and safe conditions for workers?
Yeah, and I can start with that. So the reality is that most of workers are not working on organic farms. The migrant community come and work in any farm that can give them jobs. Specifically, Migrant Justice is working with dairy farm workers, and most of the farms here are not organic. And that landscape of the family farm, organic, natural, healthy, is not true. It's just something that it's a screen to sell it to something, a facade that it doesn't exist. So I think what we have to do is first come to the community, talk to the workers, understand their struggles, understand their history, understand their needs and their priorities, and really let them lead the changes. And that's how, on these 10 years, Migrant Justice has been growing and moving forward, is because the workers themselves that are the experts that are working day by day on these farms can tell us, what is needed. And they created this program, Milk with Dignity, kind of a response of a system that is not for them. It's not created to protect them. It's not created to do anything to stop the abuses or the bad conditions. So I think it's really important to listen to the people where they are. Non-migrant farm worker here and there, you can be an owner of their own farm, so they are led with just being exposed to any abuse that the employer wants to provoke. And also we understand that the farmers are suffering, so it's important to see the whole picture of farmers cannot afford to pay better wages. And dairy, the prices of milk are so low that the farmers are really struggling. Add that to all the history of racism and capitalism. So on top of that, we have to see really who is profiting from these farms, who is putting all the pressure into farmers that brings the downward pressure to the workers. So I think our mission and our work as land care movements and to be sure that there is fair labor is to listen to the workers, to follow their leadership, and to really understand that they have solutions. They are bringing solutions. These are people that know what is needed.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
If I could hop in on that, I think the listening and the leadership part is essential, and helping to empower to see that happens. I really feel that by that land access, that farmland is unfair for everybody, but specifically minorities. And I think the way, if you're want to help that movement, or help the fair food movement, and you're on this call, if you have access to land that you're not doing anything with, that can be used by someone and turned into production, and a living can be made off of that. And in touching that lightly, like not just for a season, but if someone knows that they can farm on that land for 5 years or 10 years and want to put the time and effort into building that into a farm, that dramatically will impact their lives and their direct impact to food. So I'm definitely on the side of as many people as that we can get to own their own entity, to own their own thing, and be responsible for that, and and go down, when it's bad, deal with it. When it's great, enjoy it. But yeah, I think we put a little too much not responsibility, but too much the farmer that like Marita said, that is suffering. I think we're able to let them kind of do their own thing, and give new people that are willing and open to the opportunity to take those. But it really comes down to access to land, and if you can afford it, and use it.
And I think it's important that whatever we create, it has to be enforceable, because there are a lot of laws and there are a lot of standards and certifications, but really first they don't come talking directly to the workers, and they are not enforceable. So when we create things that are just like in paper and not really going deep into an analysis and bringing the leadership of the workers or the community, I think that's a problem. So that's why we need to really, like, whatever we create, it has to be enforceable, and like have that economic aspect, the economic justice, who's profiting from this, and besides access to land, also access to the profits, like just distribute the wealth. Understand that the work on the farm really has to be well paid.
Thank you. And Diana, was there anything that you would like to say about land share and pesticides and the impact of pesticides on workers of the land?
Sure. I think it's really important that we educate consumers and the public. I think a lot of people, I've talked to a lot of people, even some of my neighbors, and they think that they're getting an organic program, from their lawn care company. And I go and I look, and it's definitely not. So I think if people are more aware of how widespread the chemical use is in our landscapes, and just how much exposure is happening, that just because the sign is gone doesn't mean the chemical is gone, or that, I think they don't realize maybe that the applications are regularly scheduled, and they're happening, like every 4 to 6 weeks. So for that whole season that your child is playing on the athletic field, they're being they're being exposed, or in the park. So I think it's important that people know about that, so that it can change, and we can ask for different practices to be used. I mean, it's very possible. Over 100 cities over the whole country have demonstrated it, and more are following suit. And I think it's achievable, but there still needs to be more awareness and education.
Thank you. And certainly one of the benefits of organic farming and gardening is that it does use fewer toxic pesticides, so that is also a help for workers, farmers and farm workers. Thank you all for responding to that question. So the next question I have is, In what ways has the pandemic improved access to local food? And how can we continue to improve access to both local and culturally appropriate foods for all?
I think I'd like to just say that this spring, when we had stay-at-home orders, I was just really impressed by how quickly our local farms put together a delivery service. It was really great, and I enjoyed seeing that, how convenient it was, and it was, well executed and really clever. And it made it easy for people to get food and not even have to go to the grocery store. They could bypass that, which was, a benefit to people.
I have to say that we people are so powerful when we want to. So power to the people. I've seen responses and I've seen farmers, especially in vegetable farms, just putting boxes together. A lot of people just creating systems of distribution. We as Migrant Justice had created at the time of the pandemic forms in Spanish that were just translating other things that other towns were doing for support around access to food. And, had one of us just checking who will fill out those forms and just coordinate volunteers. People even being afraid of going outside and being exposed, that we were able to create different systems for distribution of food. And it was interesting to see, people that are really good cooks just preparing meals and that growing into like hundreds of meals for people that before even the pandemic didn't have access to food and had food insecurity. So I think I just want to give, the COVID has taught us a lot, that when we put our minds together and our efforts together, we really can do things way much better in solidarity and understanding. So I hope that that's not gonna end even when COVID ends, that we know that we have a system that we have created for supporting each other and being able to support our community that doesn't have that accessibility to food that easy.
Thank you. Jameson, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I totally agree. I hope that this is not just a fly-by-night trend, that some of these changes that have been made quickly with the pivot, that they're here to stay. A lot because farmers, naturally, we adapt quickly and made those changes, and lots of investment now has been put into those changes. And for us to go kind of back to the old ways, won't be helpful for farmers, and I think consumers at this point, really understand the convenience and the efficiency part of it. So hopefully it's there to stay. But what I found, or what we found at Oris recently, is that there is a really big demand for local foods, especially around delivery. But the access piece is what's very hard to crunch, because the people that have the money to buy good local food and get it delivered to their house aren't necessarily the ones that really need it the most. So when you look at a lot of the food bank work, not to discredit it, but the federal government put a lot of money into this farmers to family food box program that really blew up back in the face for the New Hampshire food pantry, because the food that was being sent was rotten commodity junk that was coming from Delaware, where there was definitely organizations in the state that really wanted to help play a bigger role in that, and it was outsourced. So those that really needed the fresh, good food, it wasn't in their box. So that's something that I think we can all try to work on. and think about. The cultural food piece is interesting too, because depending on the culture, it's a whole different diet. And you know, for this season, we do pop-up stands in a mobile market in multiple low-income communities in Concord and Manchester. And depending on what community you're in, changes what display of produce that you're going to have. And I know that that those foods, especially we do one at Morningstar, so we have Congolese that run that farm stand, and people will come and spend, you know, $100 on soursop and amaranth greens and African eggplant, and it's like if you were to, you know, give Joe Schmo a pizza, you know, like it's to be able to have food that's from your community, that is from your culture, is really empowering, and it really makes them really, really happy. So you know, I think, how do we get that money, or how do we get that food into those that can't afford to pay for that food, goes back to the access piece. And I know a lot of local nonprofits, including Oris, have you know, local food funds that we can use that money to help distribute those crops specific to those people, because they're in our networks, and that's one way that you can help support that. And there's tons of funds that are operating right now.
Thank you all. So I have 3 questions left, and then I see that there's some questions that are accumulating in the chat. Thank you, everyone. Please keep putting any questions that you have there. So the next question that I have is, we touched on this a little bit, but if there's anything more anyone has to add, how can organic farming, land care, and eating mitigate climate change?
So I'll go ahead, I guess. And I think the conversation about this is centered around agriculture. Clearly soil health is important because we can sink carbon in the soil if it's healthy. But I think landscapes are an overlooked place in that conversation. And we really should talk about, you know, utilizing our landscapes to create healthy soil, and, you know, to help sink carbon and to reduce emissions. You know, synthetic pesticides and fertilizers are fossil fuel intensive. They can damage the soil's ability to hold carbon, and even synthetic fertilizers can release greenhouse gases from their application. So there's multiple ways. And the equipment that we use, if we can choose electric equipment whenever possible, that's another way to reduce that, or people-powered equipment, ideally.
Maybe in the bigger scope is just, it has to stop being a commodity to be organic, you know. It has to become what it is, like accessible to everybody.
Jameson, do you have anything to add? And if not?
Yes. So, you know, I think back to the COVID thing, which we always seem to, you know, that's the natural thing to go back to. I feel like distribution, you know, when shelves were empty for food, it dawned on them, or rather, when in Dubai, you could see the sun for the first time in 20 years. You know, the amount of resources spent just moving food around and the waste that's associated with that is unbelievable. And even organic aside, just by shopping locally and keeping those dollars in local farmers' pockets will have a dramatic change on climate change. And I think if we can do that first, and then try to get everyone to eat organic, I think we'll be in good shape.
Thank you. And I just saw just one quick clarification for Diana. When you were talking about landscape, someone asked if you meant lawns and yards and public spaces.
Yes, definitely. I think we have a great opportunity to use those and create healthy soil.
Thank you. All right. My next question for all of you is, how is the organic farming community addressing issues of social justice, personal and planetary health from your perspective? And how can organic farming better address these issues?
Well, from our part, like I was saying, we don't work specifically in organic farms. I think the support that we have received and the acknowledgement that here in Vermont, the biggest abuses and violence had happened in organic farms to migrant workers. So it's just acknowledging that because it's organic, not necessarily there's like social justice, or there is like no racism or no good treatment to the people. So I think so far we had a lot of support, and we were able to bring you know, the organic community to understand why we work with Milk with Dignity, why we're doing the work that is not only talking about this illusion of organic food being perfect, but bringing the human factor, bringing the people that are harvesting this food. It's really important for connecting all the dots, right? We can talk about the planet and the animals, but the people are so important there. So I think, yeah, a lot of people are addressing these issues, and understanding has been really important in supporting our campaigns, even that it's not about organic, but understanding that once we keep changing one thing, it's gonna like consequently keep changing the other things.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that if there's, you know, I think that the movement is strong, but if there's one thing that could be kind of worked on, is I think that a real focus on policy work is important, especially like on the state level, and really around, I feel like economic subsidies in some ways. The amount of money that is subsidized for school lunches and in institutions that that is going to these larger commodity farms by nature, which is bringing down the cost, or bringing down the cost of the good, but the value and the true cost doesn't match that cost. So you know, I think if we're able to make true investments into small farmers through some creative economic work, I think that having that policy in place so that when that first timer comes to a market and the carrots are not $4, now they're $2, we can make it more affordable for people, but not find that other $2 from the farmer. That has to come in the form of economic work, you know, just like they're doing for the $2 box of cereal. We have to make that shift so it's coming towards fresh, small farms. And yeah, we have to battle this idea of, you know, fresh local food is too expensive, and you know, 5% of New Hampshire is actually shopping with local farms. So if we were to get another 15%, what would that impact be? If we were to get 50%, what would that impact be? It would be massive, and the only way we'll be able to do that is with strong policies in place for when we're ready to make that pivot.
Diana, did you have any thoughts about that question that you wanted to share?
I think they covered it. really going to defer to their expertise on that one.
Thank you. So I have one more question and then I'm going to go to the chat box. So my last question for you all is, in your opinion, what specific actions can the Northeast organic farming community take to be more inclusive of farmers, farm workers, residents, and eaters interested in joining the movement?
Well, I think to just sign into a letter that was sent today with all the Northeast Organic Farm Association asking Hannaford supermarkets to join the Milk Unity program, even that is not organic. So supporting the campaigns that are led and models that are led by workers. We are part of the WSR model. We have the Milk Unity program that actually has created a new system. What I wanted to share this is like, we live in a system of industry and food that is exploiting people, that is oppressing the farmers, also exploiting the immigrant workers. And the workers had created a new system where you have economic justice, where the money is not coming from the farmer's pocket or not waiting for the government to pass a bill that is not going to be enforceable. This program is really bringing money from the companies that are profiting from it. It's bringing education to the workplace. It's bringing the standards that are enforceable because the investigators and the people that are doing the audits and certifying these standards are local, are bilingual. So language accessibility is really important when we think about any programs that we do, understanding that the majority of workers are immigrants for services and all that. And this program has also this legal agreement, you know, so companies cannot just sign out or have a pilot program that is proving if it works or not. What we have created with WSR, what we have created with Milk Unity is something that can be adapted to any industry as far as led by workers. And I think any industry, anybody that wants to be part of the movement has to come out from not trying to improve the system that we live, but really create our own, because this is not working. We are seeing the results of climate change. We are seeing that forced migration is coming, how the hurricanes in Honduras, the floods in Mexico, all that, it's forced migration. The open market to other countries, the what call fair trade is not really fair in exploiting people. So I think we really have to acknowledge these things, and the Northeast region is doing a great job, but you can do more. And I think it's just understanding that we're not going to fix the system. We really have the opportunity right now to build our own. And there are things that have been happening, like the WSR.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things the community can help with right now is still staying as strong buyers of local and organic food. I think the impact of keeping those dollars rolling around spreads out beyond just the food itself and all the people that are connected to it. And as we saw with COVID, the resiliency that New England has as a food system is strong and stronger than the alternative. So yeah, I think the best thing to do is to keep your dollars around here, and be strategic with even those farms that you are buying from, and then back to the policy piece. I mean, we're at a turning point right now, which gives us the ability to try to get some strong policies like the one that was just spoke about moving. And I think that's all we can do, and hunker down and wear a mask.
So I think an important thing that we can do is to host events just like this one to talk about it, because I think people are really just not aware of what goes on the farm and what workers are dealing with and how they're being treated, and that the education piece and the awareness piece is very important. So more talking about it, and that's how you get people to understand, and we can change the system.
Diana, are there ways that you think organic land care could be more accessible, not just in like a residential aspect, but in a more community aspect? I know you've worked in both of those areas.
I think probably with maybe volunteer programs, to have people do hands-on work, maybe go and, pull some invasive plants, in the park, and that way, you avoid herbicide use. Education of things like that, prevention is really important with something like that. Also, changing people's expectations. Our kids' sports fields don't need to look like, a stadium. They just need to be safe and healthy. Same thing with our parks. There's nothing wrong with dandelions. There's nothing wrong with clover. And we need to, accept, a more natural looking lawn area.
Thank you. I'm gonna open up the chat here. Get back to the top. There's been a lot of activity in the chat. So thank you everyone for answering all those questions, and also for everyone who has posed questions, and please continue as new questions arise. So the first question I see here is, how many immigrant workers are on New Hampshire farms, and how many dairy farms with or have immigrant workers?
I don't know in New Hampshire, I'm in Vermont. I can give you the numbers from Vermont. So 10 years ago, it used to be thousands of dairy farms. Now it's less than 800 dairy farms, but the amount of milk produced is still the same. So you see the big conglomerations. We count around 1,500 migrant workers on this industry. We don't count the migrant workers on apple orchards, vegetable farms, and the maple industry. We just work with dairy farms, but those are the numbers in Vermont. So I don't know about New Hampshire.
Thank you. I don't have the information about New Hampshire either. I don't know if Jameson, do you have any information about that? And if not, it's okay.
I don't know about the dairy farm part, but I could say that that if you were to, besides like the mom and pop, 5-acre type farms, pretty much every other farm that I've been to is relying on migrant workers, especially the apple industry. That's without a doubt. Pretty much any strawberry you eat all summer. Every year, corn. I mean, it makes up the vast majority of the workforce, for sure.
Thank you. And I wanted to share a comment that's in the chat here about the Agricultural Justice Project. So this comment is expressing that NOFA as an interstate federation, NOFA New Hampshire is one of 7 state chapters of the greater NOFA network. And as an interstate federation, NOFA is a partner in the Agricultural Justice Project, which is a farmer and farm worker shaped effort to bring a high bar set of standards for good labor practices, living wages and prices that cover the full costs of running an ecological farm to organic farming. So those are some additional resources that are out there.
And I have to give my kudos to Elizabeth Henderson for talking about EJP, because they support Migrant Justice and they were able to open spaces for our program. And to bring the voices of the workers. So that's another thing that the community can do. AJP was able to bring Migrant Justice to the table to talk about these issues with Fair Trade USA and in other spaces.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that. Okay, then the next question that I see here is, okay, how, this is for anyone who can answer, how do you envision proper redistribution of wealth and benefits and taxes, farm workers becoming landowners through land redistribution, specific programs to permit more BIPOC people to access land tenure? So those are a couple of different questions there.
I think adding what Jameson said about policies and bringing more money to the small farms, what Milk with Dignity does, again, is bringing the companies to pay a premium to the farmers, directly to the farmers, to be used to improve the conditions in the farm for workers. So that's the economic redistribution on Milk with Dignity, and that's the economic justice that this model brings. It's just like following the money and who's profiting and just bringing that money back to the farms. That's our program, and that's the solution that the workers had created.
Thank you.
Yeah, if there's I think if there's a way with the I think with the high cost of land and the cost of entry is so large, but with a little bit of piece of land that can be used correctly and to its full potential, people can make a living off of that. And we have to break that idea that, you know, you have to do these pro formas to make it so that you have to grow 100 acres to make $30,000. But there's lots of farms that are really hyper focused on small, direct to consumer, and you can do that by buying a house that maybe only costs $400,000 or $500,000 in New Hampshire. That is still very difficult to get for a lot of people. So I think investments in land trusts and different type of agricultural trusts that will hold the land and protect it is a way to kind of shift some funding around so that the cost of entry is a little bit more affordable for people. You know, with the farmers that we're working with, 23 different farmers, not everyone wants to own their own farm. Some people do want to own a farm. And if you're a new American or a sixth generation American, for most of us, it's very difficult to get that land, especially right now. So we have to come up with creative ways, creative partnerships that people are owning that land, different entities are owning that land, and slowly chip away at it that way, in my opinion.
Reparations, if you can pay for food that's more expensive. Also donate to projects of BIPOC communities. There are a lot of things happening around. Just Google it. You can find a lot of things. There's a Soul Fire Farm in New York. There are other projects up in the Northeast region. There is a lot happening from indigenous communities as well. So I think if you're able to be on internet, you can find all these BIPOC projects where you can donate money also.
Thank you. I'll go to the next question if we are ready. The next question here is, do you see the role of BIPOC farmers, farm workers, and BIPOC-led initiatives playing a bigger role in the food system as we enter a new season with COVID-19? as numbers begin to rise and restrictions are reinstated?
Do we have a choice? We don't. Like BIPOC communities have been always doing this and working and struggling, COVID or not. So I think having a bigger role or a more visibility, it's up to you lifting up their voices and giving them more spaces to do so.
Yes, we know that farmers and farm workers and grocery store workers, so many people in the food system have already been deemed essential and certainly will be again. And so, as you know, Marita has been expressing with Migrant Justice's programs, you know, what protections are in place to uplift those communities. I don't want to move on to the next question if anyone else wanted to answer that question that was just posed.
I think she said it perfectly. I think she nailed it. There's nothing to add there.
So another question here is, how are immigrant communities dealing with the pandemic? Is there anything additionally you'd like to share?
Well, here in Vermont, people have been scared since the beginning about getting sick and not having access to healthcare, especially if you're undocumented. Being scared of getting sick and losing your job, not having paid sick days, and all that. So far in the dairy, we haven't had positive cases with COVID. But yeah, the access to food was something, and it is something that has been a challenge. So creating these networks of distribution has been really key for the community support. Also, Migrant Justice was able to create a solidarity fund. So for people that didn't get the stimulus money from the government, we were able to distribute money that was donated to our organization just directly to the workers. And we just passed a bill where the state is going to invest $5 million into all the migrant community, not only in dairy farms, but all the migrant community, and everybody in the state that hasn't received the stimulus payment, they are going to receive a check. So it's been scary times to know, and I shared, I think, at the beginning that some farms had to close and people had to move, because if you lose your job, you lose your housing situation. They had to move over the country in the middle of the pandemic with the restrictions, exposing more people to get sick. So I think, thinking also about how can we make healthcare accessible to our communities is really important. So yeah, we've been dealing, being called essential, but not really taken into account in any of the support grants or anything like that. So we had to create our own systems, and we will continue doing that work, I think.
Thank you.
I think for us at Oris, it's kind of like this double-edged sword. Like for the people that are in the farm program, they saw their sales triple this year. So it's been a great growth for economics. We had 3 farmers buy a car this year. A farmer bought a truck. 6 farmers opened their first bank accounts. So like that stuff was great. But then they also, you talk to them and they miss going to church. They miss, their family. They miss the normal stuff like we all do. But outside of the farm program, throughout the rest of the community, I mean the needs are everything from food to a winter jacket. It's literally it's hitting people really, really hard. I think this kind of brings me back to the goal of self-sufficiency. I mean, that's the mission of ORIS is helping to empower folks so that they can gain resiliency by working with each other. I think that's kind of what's helped people stay above water, but it's very fragile. That's why especially for farmers who are relying on people buying their food, if these trends of people supporting local don't continue, then how do you make up that gap? And so yeah, I don't know if that answers anything, or I'm definitely getting tired now.
Thank you, that was helpful. And I'm going to ask a follow-up question about the immigrant community, which is for you, James, since this is about New Hampshire specifically. And are there any immigrant communities in the North Country of New Hampshire that you know about?
In the North Country, no, not that I personally know about. We hyper focus in. Well, I mean, to be completely honest with you, on NHPR the other day, there was a story about a woman in Berlin, New Hampshire, who was from Somalia. But other than that, we're really focused on Manchester and Concord, and our executive director moved here from Somalia, started working at McDonald's at the airport, got a cool part-time job with the city, and now is running this large organization 8 years later. And I find that extremely empowering, and I think for other folks in the community, definitely see him as a role model.
There were two comments that came in during our conversation. One person also works with food insecure folks in the Seacoast area and was mentioning that sometimes clients state that vegetables and fruits are past their prime, and I was just also adding, hoping that we can solve the problem of food insecurity and having healthy food be part of that solution. And another comment about lawns and landscaping was reiterating what Diana had pointed out with the perception of how our lawns should be, and also bringing up that edible landscaping is steadily inclining, but it requires a bigger initial investment, which is challenging, especially during the pandemic. So I wanted to share those comments. And also that people can start by eating dandelions was another comment that came in. Okay, going down to the next question. All right, this question is, this person's curious to learn more about getting historically oppressed communities and new immigrants long-term land security. And what are the new models we can explore, such as worker co-ops or new land ownership models, so workers and communities have more agency and self-determination over lives, land, means of production, and to build wealth for themselves?
Yes, I think the co-op model seems to be the most successful model that I've heard of. That and the tough part with the downside of those models is you really need a really strong core group of people that really want to do it. you know, I think if people are really open to, yeah, new different types of formations and enterprises, and maybe if someone's open to doing a lease, but a really long-term lease, you know, I would say a minimum of a 10-year lease. If you can have language in there, and there's organizations that will help you through that process, so that there's outs for both of you. But you know, if you need water and you need greenhouse space and you need parking and you need a porta potty and you need dumpsters and you need all these things, you know, that's going to cost that farmer a lot of money each year. So they want to know that when they make these investments or they dig a well, that it's secure and that they're going to be able to stay there. And you know, specifically for the refugee community that we work with, these people were all farmers back home, were kicked off their land multiple times. And so when they finally do get a piece of land that they feel comfortable with and that they see as their own, to have them move again really brings up a lot of trauma. And there's an organization up in Maine that, you know, worked with a agrarian trust to fundraise and purchase land so they don't have that debt coming into it, and that the, you know, the little capital that they do have, they're able to invest in the infrastructure they need to make a farm a farm. Open land is just pretty and its potential, but without the tools and the infrastructure, you know, you're not going to make it. So yeah, I don't know if that helps. But.
No, I think you make really good points. You know, the community I work with, they always feel like they are not here to create a co-op. I think co-ops are going to be, are the best model to follow. And it's just to bring in that into the mind of people that are here surviving, but also temporary, even that there are years that they live here. It's that sensation that you don't belong here and also cannot go back. So how can I start something here? It's just some work that we are doing around our community, because yeah, I agree, you need a big, strong group of people to make it work. And I think in our community, it's like, yeah, we're trying to bring that idea more and more and see how people can have creating these different co-ops.
Thank you. So I will ask this next question that's here, but I'm not sure if this is any of our specific expertise, but the question is, what about the importance of moving to a plant-based diet? If anyone has any thoughts or comments about that, I'm welcome you to share. Thank you.
I would say that I think it will work for some people, but back to the cultural part. I mean, there's you know, we have farmers that grow lettuce that don't know what to do with lettuce, you know, so you know, I think we have to respect what they want to eat, and I think if we can make, it's baby steps. I feel like if we can get a little bit more people to eat a little bit more vegetables and kind of beat at it that way, I think that has some sway. But you know, obviously a plant-based diet would solve a lot of climate issues and health issues, but well, people are people, I think.
I think you make a good point too, Jameson, about what foods are culturally appropriate, and wanting to foster people's ability to be able to eat what's best for their bodies and what people like to eat. Looking at the questions here. So this is a question about how do consumers know about what organic food can be trusted and what cannot. I don't know if any of you have any responses to that. I can say, you know, from a local perspective that I think being able to get to know your farmer and how they grow is always a great way to know where the food is coming from and what type of inputs are being put on there. So eating locally can certainly help with that, but at the grocery store, it can still be difficult.
Yeah, I think that there is a new movement for some new labeling that you probably know. I can't remember the exact wording of it, but there's these tomato company up in Vermont that's just like these little great packaging and stuff, but they just started this new labeling on the side, and it caught my eye at the co-op really quickly. And I've read a little bit about it, but I think there's work being done about probably laying out a lot of this really the importance of treating people that work at your farm, the people that are eating at your farm. I think that some of that stuff is in that labeling, but I could be completely wrong. I don't know if anyone else knows. Or
Yes, yes.
We're not certified.
The Real Organic Project.
The Real Organic. Okay.
Yeah.
And is that pretty the extent of it? Is it beyond organic, right?
Right, beyond organic, also taking into account fair labor, and I also believe animal husbandry, animal rights, but I'm not like 100% up to speed about all of Real Organic's priorities, but they are definitely a great organization to look into, and I'll actually type that into the chat here, Real Organic Project. And they do have a certification, and they are now a nationwide program. There's a lot of comments in here. Yeah, go ahead.
Don't get caught on labels, you know, for the fair food program, for them to have a label that there was fair labor and fair food, years had to happen and years had to pass to really see the change, that things were fair and they were really good for you. So sometimes the label shouldn't be the first thing to put on good food to say that this is real food. So it's important to have these things, but also don't get caught on labels.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. Lots of great comments in here. So what are you seeing working as far as catching consumers' attention about the importance of organic food resources in the age of COVID? And what approaches are you using that have gotten people tuned in, involved, and invested?
Yeah, I mean, for us, you know, granted, we're not certified organic, and we definitely use all the same practices. Our issue is the record keeping. So maybe back to one of those questions before about what can the movement do to make things a little bit easier. A change in the way that records are kept, specifically for people that are, you know, writing and talking in a different language, would definitely be helpful, because it, you know, to good reason, it is an extensive record keeping expectations for farms. But what was the seed of that question? I'm sorry. The
beginning part of the question. What are you seeing working what are you seeing working as far as catching consumers' attention about the importance of organic food resources in the age of COVID? And then what
Yeah.
approaches
So
are you using? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so delivery. I think that is the, I think people, you know, we've seen Amazon blow up. We've seen the delivery take over, and it's an expectation now that farmers have to grow the food, deliver the food, give you recipes, peel the squash, all things that we are ready to take on. As long as, you know, we're able to make a living and doing it. You know, that's what we do, is we quickly change and adapt. And so I'm seeing that, you know, if you're able to get food to someone at least once a week, at an affordable rate, you don't really have to advertise. We haven't advertised since February, and we've grown dramatically. And, you know, people are coming to us now. I hope that we're not their bailout. I really hope that people remember who fed them throughout all this, and continue to support beyond the pandemic. And at some point, you know, the subsidy part of food, you know, like I know I talked about that a little bit, but we have to figure out a way to, if we're not going to take money from big ag and put it into small ag, then we have to explain the value and the true cost of food. And if we don't do that, if it's not all about the consumer end, like this is what I get for this food and this is how it nurtures me. But if we can really help promote the impact, the positive impact that your dollar is having, not on your belly, but on your community, maybe that will get someone to spend $3.99 on a pound of broccoli rather than $1.69 at Demoulas. And that's what we're competing against, is that $1.69. And so we have to figure out the math. It's the only way. And maybe we have to completely, you know, change that system, and maybe use this as an opportunity to leverage our position of power, that we can really start making those changes.
Thank you. So, Diana, a couple of comments came in about land care and referring to, so this year in New Hampshire, we had a severe drought, and that folks who were able to use organic compost still had really green lawns, and for people who also weren't doing as much landscaping or allowing clover to be integrated into their lawns, had those nicer looking and more drought resistant lawns. And I know from New Hampshire, we heard similar things from organic farmers, that there are certain fields where they were doing less tillage and things like that were more drought resistant. And I wondered, Diana, if you had any similar insights or experiences with how land is impacted by the drought.
Yeah, I mean, I could see my own front yard, and I noticed, you know, we've been here a few years in our neighborhood, and I know, you know, which lawns are chemically treated and which lawns are organic by neglect, which means, you know, they mow them. They don't really do anything to them. And I've noticed, you know, our lawn came back pretty well. We don't irrigate it, and we don't have a sprinkler system or anything like that. And so, you know, it went dormant this summer because we had a very severe drought and water restrictions, which were, I think, just lifted. And I noticed that, you know, a couple, like an area, a very small area along the front where it was getting a lot of sun, we've lost some grass. But other neighbors, even ones that are not, you know, doing the healthy cultural practices that you do, you know, with organic, they're like half their lawn is dead. now, and I don't think it's going to come back next year. So yeah, you can definitely see the difference. I noticed it personally.
Thank you. Well, a lot of other great resources came into the chat. So there's some links here about other organizations that are helping with land access, like Agrarian Trust and the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust. There's some links in the side there if people want to check that out. And also, again, some additional praise for our sister chapter, for Vermont, for the great work with Migrant Justice on helping to get the COVID relief for farm workers. Okay, so here is a question for Diana. Thank you for your patience. Diana, what is a freedom lawn, and should I compost all my leaves?
A freedom lawn is basically where you, well, I guess it's a nice way of saying organic by neglect. So I guess it's as much work as you want to do. I mean, you allow crabgrass to grow, you allow dandelions and clover, things like that. You can, you can add compost top dressing if you want. You can overseed. You can do some sort of bare minimum organic practices. You can mow high, leave clippings on to return nutrients back. And as far as the leaves, we get a ton here of a lot of trees. And I can't leave them everywhere because we'll get really thick layers of oak leaves. And we do, I'd love to keep them all on the property, but we have a small property. And I no longer feel guilty sending them to curbside in the paper leaf bags, because I found out that the state of New Hampshire does not allow leaves to go into the landfill. In fact, I found out that they go from Dover, they go to Farmington to be composted. So that's a much better alternative. But yeah, I mean, if you can compost them on your property, if you can leave them in areas like under shrubs or in garden beds, like I don't clean the leaves out of my garden beds until spring, and I won't even do it until, like mid-April, when temperatures are reliably in the 50s, give everything a chance to emerge. Even then, I have wire bins in the back, and I'll put them in the wire bins. And then if there's anything hiding in there, they can leave. So yeah, I mean, it really depends on your yard and what it's like. Try and keep as much leaves on your property as you can, and try to leave some in place. Always make sure you clean them up from your driveway or around storm drains, because those are a source of nutrients. And it's good for your soil, but it's not good for our watershed.
Thank you. And I have one more question. There's another question here. What about pollinators and leaves? As a follow-up for you, Diana.
Yeah, that's the reason I leave as many leaves as I can in the back under the trees and in my garden beds. The stems on your plants too, I don't cut anything back in the fall. If I do any of that, it's again, as late as I can wait in the spring. Insects will nest in the hollow stems. They'll overwinter in the leaves. I remember I did a little early cleanup, and it was too early, and I learned my lesson because there was a garter snake in there, and he he was not happy with me, and I felt bad. So yeah, I mean, it's a good spot for pollinators, and you're gonna help increase their numbers by leaving as many leaves as you can.
Thank you. And we have another question that just came in too from Marita, but I want to expand this to everyone. So Marita, how can people in this Zoom session support Migrant Justice? And I want to also extend that to how can people support ORIS? How can people support non-toxic communities and the work that each of you are doing?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. I think I'll invite you to go to our webpage and get involved and learn about the Milk Community program. We just released our first biennial report about the program, and you can see the changes that had happened, firsthand in the farms. I think bringing spaces like this are important. And as I share, we work with NOFA Vermont for pushing the bill for the stimulus paycheck, for having cover the shift of workers if they will get sick, changing things in policy. NOFA New Hampshire has joined us on signing this letter to Hannaford that was sent today to their president. So there are a lot of ways to support research. You were talking about the co-ops, or how many dairy farms are in New Hampshire. Those are questions that are really important, because then we can get connected with the community that is milking in your state. And I think, yeah, support our campaign. We are in this Hannaford campaign in the middle of COVID, and just lifting up the voices of the workers is really important. So yeah, thank you for the space. I think that's a great thing to have these conversations.
And if I can hop on there too, if anyone's interested in learning more about ORIS, our website, refugeesuccess.org, you're welcome to go on there and learn about all the services and programs that we have. We have a Healthy Families program, we have a youth program, and then we have our NASAP program. And if you're interested in getting food, we still have our farm share running. We just started our first week of the locavore share, which runs until Christmas. So there's still 4 more weeks. And yeah, we have lots of produce, and we're also working with other producers for eggs and breads and cheeses and meats and sweets and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you.
Diana, do you want to share how we can support your work with your 2 organizations?
I guess you can visit our website, nontoxiccommunities.com. There's ways to donate, but really I'd like to see people do the same thing in their communities, and we can help. We have tons of resources, and we'll give you some hands-on support with that, how we did it. And we have sample policy, we have a strategy guide that's basically a step-by-step guide, how I did things, how other people that we work with did in their community, to make it easier for people.
Wonderful. And then there was a follow-up question, which I'm not sure if this is for Marita or Jameson or both of you. Are there any other programs like yours, well, for refugees in New Hampshire? So I think that's for you, Jameson.
There's certainly organizations that work with, aiding in resettlement and translation services and stuff like that. But we're definitely the only program that's running a incubator farmer program in the state. And there's a similar organization in Maine that's doing it, Cultivating Communities. And there's similar programs in Minnesota in the Midwest. And down in Delaware, there's that NASAP Sustainable Agriculture, National Agricultural, I'm tired, but yeah, that model was created by the USDA, and has been replicated across the country.
I'm going to share my screen one more time. Thank you, everyone. I wanted to first say before I do that, thank you for all of the really great conversation in the chat. There's a lot of really great resources there, and we'll go back through that and try to save any links and share that with you all again when we reach back up to you with a recording of this meeting. We can share some of those useful links as well beyond the links to our panelists, organizations, and campaigns. And I'm going to share my screen one more time. And so we are at 8:30, pretty much. So I want to thank you all again for being with us tonight. This was a really great conversation, and Marita, Diana, and Jameson in particular, I want to thank you for your time, for sharing all of your great work with us, and all of what you're doing is really very inspiring. So thank you again.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. So you can see here up on the screen, if you did like this event, as we were just talking about, you can support the panelists at all of the links that are up here. You can follow them on social media. You can sign up for their listservs. You can support them financially with donations. I also wanted to share that November is NOFA New Hampshire's membership drive month. So we welcome you to become a member or renew your membership with us this month or at any time of the year. And I also wanted to ask you all to please mark your calendars for our upcoming winter conference, which is going to be on Saturday and Sunday, February 13th and 14th. It will be completely virtual this year, keeping everyone safe, and registration is now open. So we do hope that we see some of you there. And thank you again for spending your evening with us, everyone. This was really, really great conversation. I hope you have a great night.